Good morning, people. Welcome back. Well, actually, good afternoon. I've been out to the garage a few times, made a few recordings, none of which you'll see because I deleted them. I have just been down. I was actually about to go down to see whether I've got a delivery, but I've already been down, so the answer is not yet. Waiting for a few things to be used in the workshop. Nothing that... well, no, actually, some of them are actually important. They're the aluminium extrusions that can be used for fences when I'm using the track saw system, for the 90-degree cuts, etc., and which the whole system is going to be working around where I can make narrow strip cuts. So I've got a couple of rails coming. I've got a couple of switchable magnets that can be used on this lovely little cast iron saw, so it will help the positioning of jigs or featherboards, or mainly featherboards, but also sometimes I'll put a switchable magnet down the side of the rip fence, turn it on. It then helps to support and resist any flex in the rip fence. However, surprisingly, and quite surprisingly, that works really well, just the way it is. So when Brian, who is the chap that gave it to me, or his dad, because he said Brian had said that he had tidied it up a little bit prior to moving it on, he said he did actually align it quite well, and I actually agree with him. He's done a jolly good job, so well done, Brian. It's a bit unfortunate, his dad having passed on and him not actually being able to make use of it. So I was actually a customer for where he works, and we got chatting, as one often does with certain people, and he says, look, it's yours for the taking. And initially I was a bit reluctant, but then when I went to pick it up, I go, oh, I know why you're getting rid of it, mate, because it's flaming heavy, and moving it around was not that easy. So small saw, very heavy. You can understand the big ones, but I was surprised by that. Anyway, I'm in the workshop, and so are you. I have come to a couple of decisions, more decisions or developments, and one is how I'm holding it down, how I'm holding the saw down, and the other, of course, very similar, is how I lift and lower the wee kind of like a sub base for the saw, so I can level up the base, so I can get it to level up with the side tables. And that's just through this little assembly here, threaded inserts, threaded rod, knobs, nuts, washers, etc. Simple and quite elegant. I'll be able to hold the saw down just by having this sort of thing, and I can put the bolt in or the knob in, etc., threaded rod, and hold it down that way. I can then adjust the whole base, the custom wood base, off of this surface. So that's just by lifting and lowering the nut. So it's effectively a jacking system that I can adjust there, then lock it off with the wing, with the knob, and I'm set. So nice little combination there, making the space between the two raised areas a little bit wider, so that will accommodate me being able to have a straight panel or cut along there, and I don't have to hack it out. I am somewhat puzzled by the fact that this is the original hack out, and when I've just repositioned it, it didn't really need it, and I'm thinking I've done something rather odd there, because when I'd used this saw before, I had to have that to be able to get the arms to swing around properly. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I'm just throwing my hands up. It's like, I don't know, just move on. One of the things I said I was doing is putting a block underneath this part, putting a block on the sub base, and it can have a threaded, I'll make a thread in it so that I can put a bolt so that I can tune where the bolt is, pushing up against the housing, so it's a hard and static stop, so that when I pull the saw out of the mitre station, I can slip it back in, and having those metal bolts in that position, it will relocate in exactly the same place. Now, to achieve that properly, because that's got a little bit of a curve on it, I'm going to cut some section of steel like this. It's 10 millimeters by 40, and I can pre-drill it. Set this in place, tighten it down, and then I can place these pre-drilled pads. Excuse me, a bit of a croaky voice from somewhere. But I can put those pads down, push up against the casting, the moulding there, fix it in place. 4 points, exactly the same. Now I've got a nicely located and easily replaced saw for this workstation. It also means not having any restriction from these 4 pads, well, only backwards and forwards, but I can actually tune where the saw actually sits by adjusting these bolts, which means if I make my workstation side, or the benches, with a measuring type set up here, I can tune the saw to register with those tapes, because I've seen some people, and they've come up with some really good ways of doing it, is making or put it this way, to get it right, some of the approaches are static. They're fixed in place ever thereafter. And if anything changes, it can be a little bit of a problem for them. One chap had it where he had the aluminium section he could bolt down from underneath, meaning he could loosen the bolts off and then move the aluminium section that had the actual tape measure on it. He could adjust the aluminium strip, and I thought, that's a good idea. I'm not actually going to require that sort of finesse. However, what I am going to do is have the saw so it can move slightly, maybe 2 or 3 mils each way, something, 5 mils at the most each way. So that helps there. The other thing I'm doing is, once I set, I'll just put this down, put the stop in. Once I've got the saw dropped down like that, the rails that I'm going to get cut will be accurately, they better be, accurately drilled at, or laser cut at 100 mil spacings, but the first hole is 50 mil in from the end. And I go, oh, that's a good idea. If I have that bar registering against the tooth of the blade, like that, then of course it extends out past, and I can make all the marks in my top that I can then drill for my bench dog holes, and them being registered in that manner means that I've got a finite point. Now, fly in the ointment, I hear you saying at 50 mil in, that's to the centre of the hole. Ah, yes. So when I do it, I have to come across that extra 10 millimeters or that way to get my bench dogs to register to the face of the bench dog to the blade. And then I can do the same on this side. Not that I use this side very often for measurements, and register it so the two sides are dedicated to the tooth position on each side of that respective side of the blade. So there's that. Draw. It's going to have to be not a bearing, at this stage, not a bearing slider because of that angle. I'll still look at that, but maybe I'd just make a simple drawer that can slide underneath and flush up on the front there, because I can't have anything sticking out past this, because then the arm won't nest in properly, and it won't. So if I wanted the drawer front to come up over the face here, that means pushing this cut back even further, which makes this void here bigger. But by having the drawer pull out and then just put a little packer on the sides of the drawer that make up for the height difference, it means I've effectively got a bigger work area here, meaning also that the parts, should they be longish up to this length, they've got nothing to support them out here. But my drawer pull out idea with the packers makes for quite a big surface at no impediment for the rest of the function of the saw. Yay! Ditto clashing strips around this, probably this edge here, this edge and this edge, and then continuing out on the front edge of the flip out part. That's almost certain. Doubt that I'll do any clashing strips at the back, just because, and questioning whether I clash these off or not, these two edges. I'm kind of leaning not to do it. This is not a furniture type or high quality top or unit. It is just simply a functional top that's a little bit unit that's a little bit more tidy than what I've got currently, and with all those other extra things that I want to include in the new version. So I'm not trying to not compete, but to come up to the standard of a lot of the makers that have made some really lovely cabinetry for their workshop. So even though I've kind of approaching that sort of approach, or that issue here, again, that was more done out of let's try it and see, rather than this is what I want. Again, here I've clashed the front of this unit simply for exactly the same reason. I wanted to do it because I wanted to have a bit of an experiment, because later on I may well want something a little bit more serious in this sort of thing, and a little bit of practice. What it had proved to me is that I'd rather do it this way, where it's just simply clashed square onto the surface, versus the rebaited version, which I think is better, but it can be a bit of a pain. I can flip-flop on that one, but if I'm going to do anything on the mitre station, it'll be just like this. Maybe maximum 10 millimeters, maybe even down to 5 millimeters. Clash it off, give it a bit of a sand, and be happy with it. That was one aspect here. These aren't actually fixed in place. They're actually only doweled, and I'm amazed at how well they actually sit and retain their position. Without much effort, I could wriggle these off completely, and eventually I will put a screw, maybe 3 screws in that length, and just to hold it in place. The one thing that I did question was having that wide a clashing strip, and it's got more chance of it flexing and moving off. However, being that thick has allowed me to get the dowel into it to give it some bite into this. So yeah, quite surprised at how well that clashed off actually. So yeah, and that's why sometimes the joints don't look quite what they perhaps could. Hasn't had a lick of sandpaper or glue in there, so yeah, I'm not upset with that. The cutting down of all the panels, which have been roughed out for dimension there, is the next job. So I'm having a wee bit of a side look at this. Well, not a side look, I have to be able to get the dimensions for the panels. I'll cut them down, have a think about what I have to do for the clashing strips, and then yeah, that'll be a big step forward. And hopefully the workshop will start coming together in the next couple of weeks or months leading up to Christmas, this being right at the beginning of October. So yeah, probably not, to knowing me as I do. Excuse me. But that would be good, wouldn't it? And there'd be less of me prattling on about all the minor, in the scheme of things, issues with the mitre station. Righty-ho, that's it. Going inside, have a cuppa, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye now.